So when we bought this house, we went up in the attic and we found a box. It said, I think it was a computer box. So maybe it was like Compaq or one of the old Gateway computer, maybe something like that, So we were like, oh shit, like they left us like a really old computer. We opened it up, tons of fucked up like mannequin dolls, man, in this box.
Nice.
Yeah, just like tons of them, like 30 like porcelain mannequin type. Like,
did you burn it? Tell me you burn it.
No, we closed it and threw it back up in the thing and said sorry.
Yep.
We're sorry.
That's the correct. That's the correct reaction.
Maybe make a circle out of salt, but that's pretty much all you can do.
Do not disturb. Just
yeah. But there's a bunch of other boxes up there, and we're a little like, we do, but we don't want to look at them.
It's either clothes for the mannequins or more mannequins.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bright Guy into Super Friends. I'm your host, Brian Levick. Joining me for this episode is someone who sits on a throne of blank pages, Andy No Note Stoles.
What's up, podcast people?
Next is a Hollow Earth theorist and tube connoisseur, Josh Zorch.
Tube connoisseur.
I think that goes with like your tube invention with the hot dog and I mean, there's some tubes in this movie.
That's a callback.
You don't remember the hot dog tube?
Patent pending.
Next up, King Simp himself, Mike Bradley.
I'm not responding to that.
And finally, oh no, there goes Tokyo. Go Ian Leidick.
Holy shit, that is an intro for the ages coming to you live from Westmoreland County by way of North Carolina. I'm here.
Wait, what? How from North Carolina?
It's a wrestling thing. I don't want to explain the whole joke.
Okay. Definitely out of my wheelhouse on that one.
I'd just like to note, he gets a Blue Oyster Cult reference and I get fucking King Simp. What?
You supported Kong for all these years. He supported Godzilla, so I went those directions.
In what way is Kong a simp?
No, Kong's not the simp.
You simp for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, you simp for him.
Then I would be the Kong simp, not the King simp.
The king of the Kong simps. We'll get it right.
I would take Kong simp. I'm fine with that.
We'll get it in the reshoots.
Fix it in post.
All right, so the day has finally arrived. We're here to talk about the movie and about the fight for the ages, Godzilla vs. Kong. This is the culmination of Legendary's shared universe.
Culmination.
That's right.
I thought you were calling it a legendary shared universe, not legendary shared universe.
Oh, fair. Yeah. Well, they both apply. They're both legendary, right?
Do
The
they?
emphasis was on the wrong syllable.
Yes. That's it comes hand in hand with my hosting abilities. So yeah, we're talking about Godzilla vs. Kong, shared universe with Godzilla and King Kong, starting with 2014's Godzilla, going to 2017's Kong Skull Island, 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters, and finally, this year, 2021's Godzilla vs. Kong. So if you've listened to the show previously, you'll know this has been on our radar for years. I can't remember when we first sort of found out about Godzilla vs. Kong. Was that with Skull Island when they started talking about this stuff?
Probably the connectivity between Skull Island and the original, or not the original Godzilla, but like the 20, what was it? 2018?
2017 was Skull Island.
Yeah, because there was a stinger scene on that talked about a bunch of Godzilla monsters.
Yes, right.
Mm-hmm.
So is that, I'm trying to remember, is that where the Ian picking Godzilla and Mike picking Kong, is that where that originated? Or did we talk about
probably
it?
a little before that, because I think going into it, we kind of knew they were setting this up as a shared universe, so it had probably started before that movie even came out. I think if you go back to the 100th or 50th is when you can listen in on even more of it, I believe, if you're a super fan.
believe it'd be the 100th or the 150th. I was not recording at the 50th. I wasn't on those episodes.
Yes. Okay. So maybe
huh.
the 100.
I started in the 60s. So
Yeah, because that was, I think 100th is when we started doing sort of the idea for the Rumble Dumble Jam stuff, where we were sort of pitting things against each other and
Rumble Dumble
picking a
Jam.
winner. Yeah. So it might have came up around then. That might be right. So either way, so we've been, this sort of feud has gone on for 3.5, 4-ish years, culminating in this movie. So this is a big one for us. So we'll sort of get into that matchup and where these guys stand as we get going. For right now, with the current state of the world and vaccines beginning to roll out here and there, movie theaters are starting to open back up and might actually start to bounce back. So sort of just for anybody here, did anybody actually get out to the theater for this movie?
No.
Negative.
Did not.
Okay. I actually did venture out. It wasn't too bad. It was a little bit more crowded than I expected. I think when I looked, I went on a Friday because we had Good Friday off for the Easter holiday. So I checked the theater Friday morning, and I think there was like 5 people in the theater, and I was like, oh, this is bad. I could definitely get a seat by myself for 5 people in there. There was probably about 30, 35 by the time I got to the theater that day. But it was still, I felt like spaced out enough that there still wasn't a lot of people in the theater. There was still, for being a movie, first time in the theater for probably 7 or 8 months, because I think Josh, when the hell was the last time we were in the theater? When did we see Tenet? Was that August, September?
Yeah, I think it was like Labor Day weekend, around there.
yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, that would have been like 8 months, 7, 8 months ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it felt nice to be back. I probably won't get to like everything in the theater yet. Probably not till end of May-ish before stuff starts ramping back up, and I'm quote unquote officially, not quote unquote, but actually officially vaccinated and everything ready to go. That'll be the time to get back in there. I am so excited to get back to the theater.
So the big question I have about your theater experience is how many people had their phones out during the movie?
None that I could tell, but at the same time I wasn't looking around at everybody, so I honestly have no idea. Nothing, not enough. I didn't see anyone that was going to distract me, I guess that way. Crowded theater, when you're elbow to elbow, it's very easy to see people that are on their phones all over the place, but being spaced out like 2 or 3 seats away from everybody, that helps.
I was kind of hoping just someone like the first person in your eye view was just on their phone the whole time.
Oh, yeah, it's the first time back in 8 months, and you just have that still one bad experience of someone in the theater just being a dick, and you're just like, why am I here?
You're like, why is he here?
That too, yeah. You could watch this at home, you asshat.
Asshat.
Like, for double the price, you could have HBO Max.
All right, so we at the time of this recording, I'm going to get into some numbers and sort of what's going on with this movie right now. Variety is reporting that Godzilla vs. Kong had a domestic opening of $48.5 million, and puts it at a worldwide total of $285 million. That makes it the best opening weekend for a movie over the last year. The other thing to keep in mind with these numbers is that as of right now, there are about 60% of theaters currently open in the U.S., and most of those are only at half capacity. Theaters in New York and L.A. are just about to go from 25% capacity to half capacity. So the fact that this movie has any chance at all to make some money is a pretty good sign for theaters and the box office. So the real question will be, how does this perform in its second weekend? So we're recording this on the Friday right before its second weekend. So right now we do not know what it's going to do this second weekend. So more or less, I'll just pose it to you guys. Do you think this movie can sustain a second weekend? Do you think we'll see even half of that? Do you think it'll get $25-30 million?
I think just vaccine numbers going up would drive more people to go, and I think we're also getting to that point, like, I know we've discussed this off air, but like, what's a movie nowadays with how quick they get to streaming? And I think it's stuff like this big tentpole stuff they're still gonna push. So I think it's still gonna do well, because what else are you gonna see if you want to try and get that sense of normalcy back? Like, you're gonna go see the big monster fight movie, and it's not Pacific Rim 3 or something. Like, these are both pretty well-known mainstream names.
Which starts to make me nervous, only because if this is what generates money, blockbuster movies, and not that I guess I'd be sad about it, because it's really most of what I see in the theater anyway, but I know people that make movies, they're going to want their movie in the theater. If blockbuster movies are what's going to pull people out of the pandemic and back into movie theaters, is this going to be the only thing we're going to see in theaters going forward? Everything else is going to go to streaming, but the big tentpole blockbuster stuff will be what stays in theaters.
For
I
a
think
while.
that, and then like outside of like the runs you have to do to qualify for the Oscars and whatnot, I
Oh, true.
think that might be the strategy going forward for a lot of the big studios is, well, let's just put in our big ones and everything else is made to stream.
Yeah. Mike, that's what you were saying, sort of like right now for now?
I think, yeah, for now. I think, you know, I mean, the blockbuster movies are going to draw people back in, make them feel safe in theaters again. And through that, over time, it'll go back to what it was before, but with additional streaming services. Because your average person doesn't want to sign up for 20 different streaming services and keep track of which studio puts out which movies and which streaming service they need to have to see which movie they want to watch. They're just going to go to the movie theater and watch what they want to watch.
Right.
You know, folks like us, we're going to do whatever we have to watch whatever we want when we want. But your average person isn't. So I think eventually, when people feel comfortable, it'll go back to what it was. But it's going to take a while.
Yeah. Josh, what do you think?
No, I'm in line with Mike on that. I think that's that's probable of what I see going forward. I'm hoping, obviously, that by like July, August, we actually will have whether people choose to do it or not, we will have the actual ability to experience normalcy if we want to. I think at the rates, the vaccination rates that people are going, you know, the federal government's target of getting every eligible person, I don't want to say like get a vaccine in their hands necessarily, but get them access to at least their first dose if they're on the 2-dose track by the beginning of May. Looks like it's going pretty well, actually.
Yeah.
So with that trajectory, if, you know, I hate to say it, like we're in this world where public policy is driving society, which is driving everything else, and business and art and pop culture and all of it. So it has to be a part of that conversation. The pop culture can come back when people in charge of public policy feel that there are enough people in a safe enough state to allow more things to resume operation at bigger capacities. So as those vaccination rates do go up, that will all follow like dominoes. And so if things stay on track, then realistically, yeah, by like the end of June, mid to late June, you know, you almost might be able to hypothesize that, you know, if anybody at that point is going out in public, it's sort of like at their own risk, because if they at that point, they would have had every opportunity most likely to try to protect themselves. And if they have chosen not to at that point, I don't see public policy holding the rest of us back as much at that point anymore.
Yeah.
And when that happens, then we will all be able to do what we want on a more consistent basis. So I'm with you. I wish, you know, I agree with a lot of what Mike said, and I think that, you know, the moment we feel like we're okay to do so, we're going to be right back in the theater as much as we can. We miss the hell out of it.
What do you think is going to, well, one, I guess, do you think the second weekend of Godzilla versus Kong, do you think it's going to sustain where the numbers are? You think it's going to drop? You think it's going to stay the same? And then two, going forward, do you sort of, I guess, agree with Mike, if blockbuster movies are going to be what's going to pull us out of the pandemic and eventually we'll get back to everything in the theater, or do you think blockbuster movies will be in the theater and that's basically it going forward?
Okay, fair. Yeah, so I realized I really only kind of touched on his response to the second question. To the first one, I think the second weekend numbers will hopefully show that they are going to be stronger than anything else has been for a very long time, Whether or not they're still fantastic, I don't know.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I think they're probably not going to be where anybody would love them to be, but they'll still probably be an indication of hopefully good signs.
Well, I mean, $285 million worldwide in its first weekend. It was out a week early international, and then opened last weekend in the U.S. and made almost $50 million, adding to 285. So in 2 weeks out of release, 285 million. People seem to be very happy with this number.
Yeah,
that's not a number that was very big, before pandemic times. Like, that was a lowball number for a blockbuster movie. So if they are happy with $285 million right now, I think even if it makes like $30 million in its second weekend domestically, people are going to be like, this is a hit. Like, it's sustaining in theaters.
Oh, I think even
if we're going through...
I'll say real quick. I think even if it hits, honestly, like 10 to 15 in its second weekend, 10 to 15 million has been more than almost every other opening weekend for every other movie in the last 13 months anyway.
Yeah.
So like I said, even if that drop off is huge and the second weekend return is not as great as people would like it to be, it's hopefully still in a place that is much higher than trends have been, and like I said, just shows promise. And to Mike's or to your second question that Mike answered, I think he's probably right about that as well. That if people right now we're in number one, we're still in a risk frame of mind, and then after that becomes, honest to God, like deinstitutionalization. We have to like rewire ourselves to convince ourselves again. This is what leisure in public is like. These are the things we do, and we're getting over the, not to sound like this is over dramatic, but to get over the trauma, so to speak, of the experience we've had. It like we all have actually had a behavior modifying event, and that slow trickle back to where we were is not going to be instantaneous. So yes, I agree with him that I think the things that will convince many people to try to take that plunge, continue to do it, try to take that first step out, will be driven by things like this, by Black Widow, by anything else that they get out over the summer and early fall. And I hate to say it, your lower budget movies and whatnot are probably going to be, if they're released in this time frame, relegated to either direct video or a lot of the streaming services.
Yeah, because I feel like when it comes down to it, it's money. Like, studios want to make money. If these movies, the lower budget stuff, is going to come to a theater that is already struggling to get people to go see things, but the blockbusters have proven they make money for people. That, they'll get people out of the house in the theater to see these bigger events. Mm-hmm. That's, I feel like, what's going to be pushed going forward. Whether or not we stay that way, I guess, is sort of my curiosity.
Well, I mean, for me, even in terms of, this movie versus, say, Black Widow, I think there is a unique kind of thing going on here where there is more reason to go see this on a big screen than there is for Black Widow, for the Eternals, for the Avengers, for any of that, just because of the spectacle of the giant monsters on the giant screen. And I feel like this has the ability to draw people that have even seen this at home to want to still go to a theater and watch it again on the big screen.
Right.
Whereas
That's
I don't
fair.
think like something like Black Widow would have that same effect.
You don't think the Marvel event movies are enough to pull people into the theater?
I don't think there's any reason to see it in a theater versus at home. I don't think the experience changes that much for that movie. Whereas this movie, I feel like it's a different experience. It's, there's going to be a lot of really loud noises in this movie. The sound system's going to be a really big factor in this one. And like I said, we're talking about towering monsters. What better way to see it than IMAX? I mean,
yeah.
So I think this one's a little bit different.
Andy, we'll get you in here. How do you feel about, I guess, the two questions? Do you think Godzilla will sustain itself in the second weekend, and blockbusters going forward in the theater? What do you think?
I think 30 million is probably a pretty good number
Okay.
for this coming weekend. And I think that is a pretty sustainable thing, all things considered, state of the world and all that.
Yeah.
As far as blockbusters in the theater, I think with all the streaming services available right now, it's incredibly, I feel like you have a lot of options if you're a filmmaker. And you, even like low budget filmmakers, probably have a lot more options right now than they used to get their things seen and their voices heard per se. So I feel like the direct to video, direct to stream is going to be a very big thing for things that aren't blockbusters. So in answer to your question, I think it will be anything that the studio considers to be blockbuster in the theaters or Oscar winning.
So just to get that Oscar push, like Ian was saying, a couple weeks in the theater just to get it represented and in the running.
Yep. Yeah.
But everything other than that would probably be blockbustery stuff.
That's my guess on it.
Okay. Yeah,
Just
we'll have to,
based on how all the models are looking right now.
yeah, and granted, this is probably the first one to really start asking these questions, so we'll have to keep our eye on it and see how it goes going forward over the next couple months. But I'm excited to see what happens. One of the things that Variety was talking about in their article was they actually listed the budget for this movie. So any guesses how much you think the budget for Godzilla vs. Kong is?
$250 million.
500 million
For the bill.
250
Bitch, I own the Phantom.
250 million. That's where you're going?
Yes.
Okay.
What
Anybody
did
else?
you think I said?
180 million.
I heard quarter bill, and then I immediately went 500 million. I was like, wait, that's not a quarter, that's a half.
I did the same thing. I'm having we're the
quarter is
freaking
25.
Ravagers. Yes, you can't get a pair of boots with 25 units. This movie did look expensive as hell. Ian might not be that far off. I'll go. Wait, Mike, did you say 180 or was that Andy?
I said 180.
180. I'll go 220.
Mike,
Fuck,
final
that's
guess.
what I was going to say. 230.
Andy was closest,
Good.
and he was still over.
Oh, shit.
Really?
Really?
165 million.
Oh, wow.
I have an explanation for this.
Oh god.
There was not a single actor in this movie that cost them a dime. I'm just saying, you put Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in this movie, and it's a $200 and some million movie just by adding him to the cast. There's nobody in this movie that cost much.
I think even just from a special effects standpoint, I thought this was at least $200 million.
Yeah.
Considering how much there is Kong and effect monsters and CG backgrounds, everything. I don't feel like there's a touch of this movie that does not have some sort of visual effect to it.
Well, and they didn't shy away from monster screen time.
Yes.
True.
Right.
It compared to some of the other ones they've done, the monsters are very present.
So yeah, it was a lowball number for me. I did not expect it to be that cheap, I guess.
In that respect, though, if with all of the CG and CG backgrounds and whatnot, you wouldn't have to put very many actors on location at a bunch of different locations.
Right.
And you
True.
don't really have a lot of high-priced actors there. Probably Millie Bobby Brown would be the biggest one.
Mm-hmm. Maybe.
She.
I don't know who's top build, I guess, on there.
Probably Rebecca
Skarsgård
Hall.
was. No,
Skarsgård
was top build.
Okay.
But
But yeah, still, I mean, I wouldn't say he's A-list.
yeah.
No.
So the number Variety was thrown out to break even for this movie was 330 million. So they are 45 million
That much-
off for this.
That much in advertising?
I guess.
More.
Well, advertising usually double
More than
budget.
twice. Jesus Christ.
So they were again last weekend 285 million worldwide. So 45 or 50 wait, I can't math. Yeah, 55. Jesus Christ. 45. Yeah, $45 million dollars, and they can break even. So we'll see if they
and
make
that
that
doesn't
this
account
weekend.
for any HBO Max considerations they pull in towards its
And that's
profitability.
where I was going to
factor.
go next and sort of lean into our other questions with this. So we talked about Warner Brothers bringing their entire 2021 movie slate to HBO Max and how theaters were obviously didn't like that because that would cut into the theaters and make them suffer. So they obviously theaters see it as a way of losing revenue if the movie isn't shown exclusively in theaters for 2 to 3 months. Godzilla vs. Kong actually is on pace to turn a profit while being available to stream the same day it was in theaters for HBO Max subscribers, it raises some interesting questions. So all Warner Brothers had said about the movie streaming on HBO Max was that the movie had, and I quote, larger viewer audiences than any other film or show on HBO Max since launch. Now, unless Warner Brothers actually releases some concrete numbers, we have no idea what the fuck that means.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's not even relevant because what really matters is, did it keep people from unsubscribing? Did it
Right.
grab new subscribers?
So we don't know.
That matters
We
the
don't know what
most.
the new subscriber numbers are. We don't know how many people actually watched this that were already subscribed. Like, this is a very vague promise of, hey, it did good.
And
I mean, that
based
still
on
means- Go ahead.
but say based on the earnings calls from Netflix and Disney that I've read reporters covering, no one gives those numbers out because reasons. Like,
Yeah.
someone has to have good versions of those numbers. That's the thing.
Right.
Like, even I'm assuming Disney would probably have some of the best. They don't even give it out, and usually you would think they would to hype it up more. So it's something we'll never know unless one of us gets a job there.
Yeah, and that's the thing is all they could do is over a certain period of time look at new subscriptions and retention periods. The level of difficulty from even their end of getting accurate market data from their users is difficult. And so they don't want to say things publicly that they are attributing to things that at best they would be interpreting and extrapolating to the nth degree. Like, there's the level of confidence you could try to have in coming up with that information even yourself. The one thing they could do easily, Brian, I think you just said it, was, could you look at the people who were already your customers who accessed that title? Yes. That is really the only simple, sure thing you could pull. You could try to say, okay, in the 2 weeks before and after its release on the platform, how many new subscriptions were there, and to what degree do we feel confident, or are we able to ascertain that those new subscriptions were in part or to a significant extent or in whole because of that specific thing. And then beyond that, even like, that's already muddy to begin with, and then anything beyond that is just complete, out of your ass guesswork.
Yes.
Mhm.
I mean, I think there's the metrics you can use. Like, is that the first thing someone watched on the service?
Yeah.
Fair point.
Did they
There's-
subscribe and watch that right away?
Sure.
Yeah. Was it someone whose subscription was nearly ended and like that's the last thing they watched and then they let it lapse? There's a lot of things you can still extrapolate with just those base questions, I think, that really form a significant opinion. But like, for us, like, they're never going to give us that level of detail.
No.
I was letting like very base numbers of how many people even watch this like in first 24 hours. They'll never tell us that, but that would I think be a lot too. How many people watch this day one? Because you would think those people at least care enough about the service to keep it around for something like that.
Right.
Like, you could make a metric of how many of those people are on that service still because of this movie based on first 24 hours watching, I think. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, and I think the key for them is that they show, well, we can make it both ways. Day one release, and we can still pull in the theater money. And I think that will help them a lot with their partners that were upset when, they were saying, hey, everything's going up on HBO Max.
And that's sort of what I want to lean into is pose the question of, even though, granted, we're still in this weird bubble of like coming out of the pandemic, still in the pandemic, people are watching from home, people aren't still in the theaters yet, so it's still unclear just looking at this movie how it's going to shake out. But given some of the numbers that we're getting and the box office seems to be doing well for Godzilla vs. Kong, do you think having this movie available in theaters the same day as it is streaming, I'm trying to decide, I guess, going forward, do you think this is something that can be sustained? Because I feel like the fear has always been that they would cannibalize each other if they were offered the same way. So if you could see a movie at home, but it's also in the theaters the same day, everyone's fear, at least distributors' fear, is that people are going to take convenience over going to the theater and they're going to watch it at home and theaters are going to shutter. We're at the point now where it's this movie, at least as the case scenario for this, proves that might not be the case. People can actually, there's an audience for both and both are sustainable. is that something that we could see going forward, or do you think this is a one-off case of just being lucky and coming out of the pandemic?
I
I
mean,
think this goes back to our earlier discussion about the blockbusters can do it.
Okay.
Smaller stuff can't.
Mike, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, there's certain things that you can't account for here, given the scenario. And, I mean, for me personally, if this was just in theater, I'd be waiting to see it.
Yeah.
Like, it's a scenario where I wouldn't have been in a theater personally because of my own personal, deal with where I'm at with everything in the world. So it was an outlet for me to have seen it.
Right.
But do I think people will be more likely to subscribe to a service or to pay a one-time fee to go to a theater? I think people are still more likely to pay the one-time fee to see a movie in a theater than subscribe to something.
Okay.
If this was something where it was a nominal fee to show it at home for your family, yeah, I could see people paying the one-time fee to watch it at home. But it's not. It's a subscription to a service, which in and of itself involves a bit of a hassle that some people that aren't subscribed won't want to go through just for that movie.
So you'd
or
see
possible future movies
So
that
you're,
they don't
you're thinking theaters would sort of win that battle between streaming and seeing a movie in the theater.
know. In the long run, yeah.
Okay.
With everything normalized and back to 100% capacity theaters, everything's open, the virus is destroyed, and they come to that point, I think people are going to want to be in the theaters for many reasons, not just the theater experience. Most people don't want that hassle of signing up for stuff.
Yeah. Andy, what do you think? You think streaming and movies released in theaters day and date can last together? They can have that symbiotic relationship?
It's difficult to say based on where we are in history right now, coming out of a pandemic where no one has really been in a theater too much in the past year and a half or so.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to say. I'd say this is a good stepping stone, or I think the potential is there for it to happen, but by any means, this is not a definite thing.
Yeah. Josh, what do you think?
I don't think I have anything to add that they haven't really said very well already. I'd just be repeating.
Okay.
I mean, I think one thing, very long term, we have to remember is there's a whole generation of people that are now used to watching content on 9-inch screens.
Yes.
They're kind of fine with having a suboptimal experience, watching just content in general. And I think, that's going to play in part too to the future strategy of streaming is well, if you sign up once, it's kind of a hassle to cancel. They just might not cancel. You just got to get it in there once.
Yeah.
I
feel like that'd be a fun social experiment is find someone that has sort of grown up watching things on a screen, small screen, and just take them to a movie theater for some big loud movie and be like, here you go. What do you think?
But
For
then
the
they'd
first
be
time in
upset
their
it's not the
lives. Yeah.
Dream server on Minecraft.
And they can't pause it.
Yeah.
Wait, how do I give them a super chat?
This content is way too quality. It is so
This is very
polished.
poggers.
I can't watch this being so polished. It's too good.
I now want them to
Looks
have
stupid.
a bag of emotes to throw out. Like a Rocky Horror Picture Show kind of thing.
I started thinking about the
But it's
room, but
Twitch
instead of the
emotes.
plastic spoons, it'll be like smiley face emojis or some shit.
Yeah, the shit emojis and stuff for when you're watching The Room.
That might be $1 million idea. We might have to forward that and make that.
You
Zach,
are going.
are you
Yeah,
listening?
that would ruin the lives of the people working in the theater who have to clean all that shit up.
I mean, we're not
Yeah, but
throwing
they get
actual
super
shit.
chats.
Like it's like paper emojis.
They still have to sweep the theater after every fucking
Based on the
show.
amount of popcorn I see in the theaters after people leave anymore, I don't think it'll be that different.
It'd be horrendous.
I guess that's true. Josh worked at a movie theater, so he's dreading everything we're talking about.
If you came into my lobby and said that, I would kick you in the leg and push you out the door.
I brought my own emojis from home to throw.
Although regulation, they won't fit in the broom.
That would make a really good like sketch comedy skit, like a Saturday Night Live or something, where you took, I don't want to say like Gen Zers because I don't want to put them all in a box, but if you like, I don't know, transported like a younger one, maybe like a tween, out of that world into something like, portray the idea of somehow being able to react to their thing in real life.
Yeah.
In real time, and like not understanding like, well, what do you mean? I held up the shit emoji. Why didn't something happen? Is anyone going to comment on this? Anybody? Yeah.
Just a bunch of people in the theater just holding up a thumbs up.
Yeah.
And that just gets you back to the Roman Colosseum where that thumbs up decided if you lived or died. Time's a
or you
flat
get a
circle.
theater full of people making the Poggers face. Yeah.
Oh, man. All right, so I think at this point we'll get into discussing the movie. So at that point, we're going to throw out the spoiler alert. So if you've not seen Godzilla vs. Kong and do not want spoiled for the movie, pause this now, come back to us after you've watched the movie, either in the theater or on HBO Max. After this, so spoilers are fair game. So last warning, spoilers to follow.
Wee-oo, spoiler! Wee-oo, spoiler! You know, something like that.
All right, so we are free to cover any type of spoilers that we would like to cover. And since, we sort of prefaced this with the inevitable fight between Ian and Mike choosing sides for Godzilla and Kong. So we talked about this beforehand. I think it's probably easier just to let them kind of try to hash it out for a little bit here and see how this goes.
Can I ask a question first?
Sure.
Or make a request, rather. Just that we have a moderator so that we're not just shouting over each other the entire time.
Oh, that's
So
exactly
it's
what I
actual
figured
discussion
was
and
gonna
not
happen.
just like shouting and shouting and shouting. Nobody hears what we're saying.
Yeah, somebody will have to be like, you've had your time, sir. Next.
Does anyone who has the ability to cut a mic?
I don't think...
Everyone, we've proven that already. All of us can.
Wait, that's a Skype option, right? We can...
Yeah, remember I muted Mike that one time?
I forget how to do that.
I mean, it mutes in Skype, but then the recording is still going to be awful.
Oh, that's true.
But that's what editing's for.
Yeah,
that's
just make my
Brian's
job
problem.
harder. Love it. All right, so we've decided to kick things off. I don't know. Do we want to decide who goes first on this whole thing, or are you guys just going to... Is it going to be a mad scramble?
I have a prepared statement.
You know what? He has a prepared statement. I have a prepared opinion and ideas. He has a statement. Presumably, that's a well-organized and well-thought-out statement, so I'll let him go first, since mine's more chaos.
All right, Ian. Your turn.
Back in 1954, an idea was born that would turn into an absolute juggernaut. A king, nay, god of monsters was born. A blended chimera of idea inspired by keloid scars of Hiroshima survivors. He stood tall to defend the world of man from itself. 5 years after annihilating his greatest rival, King Ghidorah, the absolute pinnacle of creation, once again shows man the error of its ways. Now, some would say Kong may be smarter than Godzilla, which would allow Kong to defeat the king of monsters. While Godzilla wouldn't pass a high school chemistry class, what Godzilla is smart in is kaiju fighting and the psychology of apex predators. Kong is still having wet dreams, and he's at his so-called pinnacle. But the pinnacle of kaiju fighting is so much higher. He needs to first be better than Rodan, Mothra, or even the humans who capture him with relative ease. Not even Kyle Chandler telling Kong, clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose, would have made a difference. Kong is a 13-cent brain and $1 million body. He's a low-tier kaiju who has to be naked to count to 21. If Kong steps up again, the last thing he will see is his guts spilling out of his body. Godzilla is back, and God help you if you are against him.
Is that it? Okay, so I'm going to focus on a bit of facts from the movie here in the content provided to us, and not just hype from my personal favorite, but in this movie, we see very clearly that Kong and Godzilla kind of fought to a little bit of a gentleman's draw. You know, Kong ends up with a dislocated shoulder.
He died in that scene. They had to use the world's largest defibrillator to bring him back from death itself.
I think that was a bad directorial choice. It didn't make any sense as to why he died from a shoulder and some scratches.
No, his shoulder was broken and he was
allow
dead.
him to
No,
have
it was
his opening
dislocated.
statement,
He
sir.
popped it back into place.
He allowed you to have your opening statement. Let him make his opening argument.
Now,
I said facts. This is all false conjecture.
Now let me also make a very clear statement about this, that the movie makes also very clear. Kong, at least in this sense, Godzilla beat a baby. If he won, it was just a baby. We see
He
Kong
sat on
meet
his
his
throne and got his ass-
ancestors
Ian, you had
he fit in the palm of their hands. Godzilla beat up on a baby. He beat up on a baby, and he could barely even call it a win. And then he needed his ass saved by that baby. The hero of this movie is Kong. Kong is the hero. There's no disputing that. Godzilla is kind of an idiot villain. He doesn't realize that this thing that's a mechanical, version of himself is what's causing all this, and it's not really a threat. He could just not just destroy human beings over it. But instead, Godzilla and his reptilian brain keep him in a little bit of a gray area.
So you don't
And the
think
hero-
that the fact that King Ghidorah took over the Mechagodzilla was an issue? You had no problem with King Ghidorah then turning that into a weapon. So you're saying Godzilla didn't foresee
know
that
that
occurring.
at the time.
Hey, we didn't see Godzilla with his galaxy brain foresaw.
And Godzilla
The
went
future.
to do it, and he got his ass handed to him by Mechagodzilla. And if it wasn't for the little girl telling Kong, don't go kill Godzilla, well, Godzilla would be dead, because Mechagodzilla would have tore him to pieces, and then Kong would have
We
been
all would be
Mechagodzilla.
dead. We all would be dead.
Why would we all be dead?
Kong would not have beaten Mechagodzilla.
Oh,
He
definitely
would have gotten
would.
his ass wrecked again and even harder. He
I-
literally
you know-
only won the fight because his axe got charged up.
Well, again, we if we want
What
to
do you
talk
mean,
about
well, that's the
semantics
only
here,
reason.
Godzilla has absolutely nothing without atomic breath. He's a one-trick pony. That's all he's got. And he uses
Kong
it.
had no tricks. His trick was my friend helped me out, and the humans bailed me out because I'm a baby back bitch who bent the knee.
He is a baby. That's very true. But he never bends any knee.
So
He goes to
I'm
roll
confused,
over
though.
the hollow earth at the end of this,
I'm
where
I'm
all
so
the monsters
confused
are
because
from.
you
And
told
he
me
is the
in
king
Kong
of
Skull
monsters
Island
at the end
he
of
was a
this.
child.
And
So
Godzilla
now he's
stayed
still a
up on
child.
Earth where there
So-
is no
so
other
he
monsters
grew
because he's
300
just like,
feet
you know
and is
what,
still a
I can't do
child.
this anymore. So Kong's down there living his best life as king of the monsters in the hollow earth where the monsters actually are. And Godzilla's just, I don't know, a surface dweller now? He
The
can't go
major
down there
problem
anymore.
with
That's
this
Kong's
film
space.
Is that Kong got a storyline and they didn't give it to Godzilla because Godzilla is a force of nature. He is uncontrollable, undeniable, an absolute maniac in the sheet and a freak on the street. He absolutely killed Kong twice in this movie. Once they had to turn off the power to their boats to be like, hey, we're not a threat to you anymore because Kong was dead. He was about to drown again and
You
get
mean
his
because
ass
the
handed to him
crocodilian
5
creature beat
more
the ape creature in the
times.
water? Yeah, one thing that can breathe underwater and one thing that can't? That's a little bit tilted. That's a little bit
I'm sorry.
tilted in one favor,
Maybe he shouldn't hang out on boats. I don't tell the Kennedys to fly. Like next.
Again, I got a problem with that, but that has nothing to do with Kong himself. We'll focus on that when we get to my problems with the movie. But
And then he gets his ass kicked again in Hong Kong, an absolute thrashing
does not
where
get
he
his ass-
dies. He is dead. He is TIA dead.
wait.
Godzilla doesn't sign. That's how he spells dead. The monkey is so dead they get the world's giant defibrillator to bring him back to life. It's a clear win. A child.
There's no
you
clear
told me he
win
was a
here.
child 5 years ago, and now he
Godzilla
grew
turns tail
200
and leaves
feet.
while Kong stays in
200
Hong
feet.
Kong.
200 feet, and now he's still a child. It's excuses.
He's clearly
The
shown to
monkey
be a child.
Can't do shit.
He's
He
clearly
got his
shown to be a
ass
child.
Clapped.
He fits in the
Twice.
palm of the hand of the true King Kong
He,
in the Hollow Earth.
All right, I'm gonna close it down.
Was it a small child? God, King Kong wouldn't even eat food. He would have starved to death if a child didn't tell him to eat.
All right, Ian. All right, simmer down. Simmer down.
To your respective corners.
Controls him.
All right, do you guys feel good? Do you need to shake it off? Do you need to like do a lap or anything?
It's just patently false
Do,
information.
do, do you need us to
Bled out.
do you need us to cut your eyes so you can see?
I mean, I just stated what the movie showed. That's all. Kong beating up Godzilla a little bit. Godzilla beating up on a baby, definitely.
Okay.
So he's only a
all
child.
right,
when he
hey,
loses.
hey, I want to get the other guys in here. You guys had your time now. All right, take a breather. Josh, Godzilla versus Kong, the fights, the how they played out. What do you think? Did you have a side? I guess going in, I feel like Mike was the only one really pushing Kong going into this, right? As far as I remember.
The hero.
I don't know if I really. Yeah, I don't think I really had any favorites or loyalties. Just wanted the story to be good.
Okay, well, we'll get to story. What did you think
Yeah.
about the fights with these guys?
Like how they actually were presented and executed, or whether like who do I think came out of victor, or who was failing, like more along the lines of what they were just arguing.
Yeah, we'll try to lean into that.
Got it. I think the way that events played out, I mean, it from what I remember from my one viewing, it kind of seemed like, I don't know, I eventually they both would have lost to Mecha. And like with that, it admittedly it did seem to me like it was coming to a draw if it was just the two of them. Like maybe eventually one of them would have just been beaten enough and tired from the fight that one could have prevailed, but neither was absolutely dominating the other.
So you didn't see a clear winner between the two of them.
I did not.
Okay. Andy, do you think there was a clear winner between Godzilla versus Kong?
Yes.
You
That's it.
can elaborate or just keep leaving it yes.
Just
And
leave
not
it
pick
there.
a
Andy.
side.
Just stop right there.
You asked him a yes or no
Well-
question. He responded.
That's fair.
They had to defibrillate Kong, so the clear winner in my head is Godzilla. He actually TKO'd Kong.
Okay.
See, TKO is an interesting term because I believe because of the dislocated shoulder, it would actually be what's considered a no contest.
Or
But
the
I'm just-
lack of heartbeat in breathing.
Which, again, when we get to the story and why it makes absolutely no sense for that to be the case, we can talk about that.
Now,
But for now, we're just on the fight.
as far as the fight goes, I think it's Skarsgård who actually says, well, they're in their little like hover chopper, whatever the fuck that thing is.
Yeah.
Looks like round 2 goes to Kong. Kong did win round 2, but Godzilla won round 1 and round 3.
If it's even around, because they fight 5 seconds after he says that. Like they both are just kind of like in their corners. It's not a real round in a sense of like someone wins the round.
But if you want to go with that, dialogue in the movie, I think
'Cause
one
then we're-
goes to
we're
Godzilla.
discounting the 10
to-
rounds won in the ocean.
No, that was
That's
round
10
1.
rounds. They went 10 rounds then in the ocean.
No, they-
if that's round 1.
I think you could go either way. I think they're, because they make a point to say round 2 goes to Kong, you could sort of just say, okay, round 2 was there. I'm with Andy. You could say round 3 takes him. But Ian, to your point, I saw the movie twice. I watched it in the theater and then I watched it when I got home too, later that weekend. And with that in mind, when I watched it the second time, round 2 almost doesn't end. Like Skarsgård says that, and then like Ian said, immediately after that, they're fighting again. So
Right.
round 2, you could either spin it both ways. Either you see it as a very prolonged round 2, where Skarsgård jumped the gun and declared someone a winner when they obviously weren't. Or you could say, okay, round 2 was Kong's, but round 3 clearly went to Godzilla because it ends with Godzilla having his foot on Kong's chest.
Because
as
they
Kong
do
is beaten.
stop. Yeah, they do stop fighting when he says, "Looks like he got round 2"
They take a breather.
for a little bit, and then
for real quick.
and then and then
Like,
That's
part of
right
I
it
when
would
he
say
hits him
after
with the
that
axe
gap
is
would
the-
be like round 3.
There's the major impact, and they both kind of get blown back.
Yes.
That's when that happens. Like Godzilla's shooting the atomic breath, and the axe comes down and whacks him in the face, and there's a big boom, and then that's when they say that line.
Yes.
And also, am I supposed to trust Skarsgård's judgment at all? As a character, like I don't think I should trust him.
Yeah, we'll get to care. Is there anything we want to talk about for the fight, like between the two, Godzilla versus Kong? Anything we want to touch on real quick?
At the end of the day, at the end of the movie, they stare each other down, and Kong bends the knee.
He bends no knee. What knee does he bend?
Drops
He
the
stands
axe.
in
It's the
place,
proverbial
and
knee.
Godzilla
He
walks
drops
away.
the axe. He drops the axe. He says, "I'm not fighting. I give up. You are better than me, sir."
Oh, it's him dropping it. It's not him listening to
It's
the
a
girl and being like, he's
proverbial
not an
knee.
enemy, we're good. And it's not his
He-
mammalian brain giving him the ability to realize, just like in the movie War Games, that there was no way to win.
Well, because he would have lost. Yes, there was
No,
way for
there
him
was
to
no
win.
winner. There was not going to be a winner. It was just going
There
to
was
end in
always-
All right, so I'm
destruction.
going to take the middle
He won
ground here
twice.
because I agree that Godzilla is the clear winner between the two of them. However, I'm with Mike in that at that moment, Kong is not saying, "You're going to kick my ass, I'm surrendering." He's saying, "We're on the same page. We're cool. Peace out, buddy."
Yeah, I'm actually agreeing with Mike on that one as well.
And I'm also upset that Godzilla then didn't super kick him in the face.
Godzilla turned tail, tucked it between his legs, and
Like
Hey,
Shawn
don't push it,
Michaels
Mike.
on
Don't
the-
put. Hey, we're in happy medium here. Do not push your luck here.
I'm just stating what happened in the movie. I mean, that's Kong stayed in place. He went away.
Like, Godzilla clearly could have went into a bout of Hulkamania and won the next round if he needed to.
All right, so let's spin to the
Ultimate
pointless
Warrior,
human
maybe.
characters that I think we're all referring to. So, what does everybody think about these human people that are in this movie?
What
So
humans?
you could have cut a good like half hour out of this movie by getting rid of the Stranger Things mini kids look for shit
The
storyline.
Scooby Gang.
Like, get rid of that. The theory podcast. Fuck. What was that for? It did nothing. Cut it. Gone.
Gave her something to do. That's it.
But that's what I mean. You just cut all of that. Like, she's not in the movie now. Nothing
It was
is
their way.
lost.
It was their way to introduce you to Mechagodzilla. That was their way of doing it.
And it's
'cause
just
it-
a shit way. I could have done it in 2 minutes.
I agree.
It was not great. Yeah.
But in that respect, those characters, seeing Fire Fist come back was kind of cool. Having him around, that he wasn't the same character, but it was still good. Millie Bobby Brown, man, she's not doing anything. Like, I'm sorry, she's very bland.
This
I
time,
think the
yeah.
only reason she's there is because you had to have somebody from a Godzilla movie in there.
Yeah.
Which
I'm not
And
sure
the
she
podcast
got-
guy, even though they were pointless, I liked him.
which
I'm not sure she got anything good to work with, honestly,
No.
Sarah and I were talking.
It just felt like the delivery was weak. That's all.
because none of
Yeah.
them gave good performances, in my opinion.
No,
I think
the
the little
only
girl did.
the only good line in this movie is when the evil guy tells the one dude to get in the goddamn chair. That's the only good line in this movie, and half of that's because it's a reference to an anime.
Josh, go ahead. What were you trying to say?
I mean, I guess it more broadly. The people on both people on this panel and in general about these movies say things a lot like, I don't want or need human stories as part of these. Just give me the monster fight and the monster conflict and stuff. I guess depends on what version of guilty pleasures you like and where you like to get them. I think there is a way to blend them well, and I personally am a fan of the first two Godzillas. God of Monsters grew on me a lot. We watched it again during pandemic, I think last summer, and I actually really liked it a lot more the second time. There's a lot to be desired out of Skull Island, but even going back to the 2014 Godzilla, I actually really like the story. I like the blend of people with the monster conflict and all that. All that said, I hated every single person moment in this movie. and not because I wanted the monsters more and that's just what I came here for. It's because it was all shit.
Yeah.
It was yeah. I feel like this director did a very good job with like the fighting and stuff, and then he was sort of like George Lucas it and was like, yeah, that's a good take.
One and done.
Yeah,
Let's move on.
Both
Is it in the can?
Both, but yeah, both by the acting and just by the script and the story. Like, I'm sorry I'm looking at the story credits and the screenwriters, and some of these are names I recognize, and I wouldn't generally say that they're bad at their jobs, but like one of the reasons that I liked God of Monsters so much more was
King of Monsters.
King of Monsters, thank you. Is the continuation of Ken Watanabe's character. And I'm blanking on her name. The other scientist, she's in the first movie as well, and she's killed in King of the Monsters. Those continuity aspects worked well. Kong was a problem because it took place in the 70s, and then all of a sudden you jump forward to Godzilla 2, and then you're in modern time, and you're like, what the hell happened with the last 40 years? Oh, Monarch was just spending that time getting established. So you had a problem there, but it feels like the only reason some of the people, like Kyle Chandler especially, there's no reason he's in this movie whatsoever.
Yeah.
I really dug him.
Is that
Dad? The dad,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I really
Okay.
dug him in Godzilla 2. But you only have him and Millie Bobby Brown just to create a semblance of continuity, which doesn't even matter and plays no role. And yeah, it was all crap. And then the human story that was there was, in my opinion, so overbloated and so intricate, just as a means. Like, everything was not a mulligan. What's the word I'm thinking of? MacGuffin. Every human detail was a MacGuffin to get something else set up in terms of the monsters.
Yes.
To give you a context for why some of the stuff could be happening by the end. But honestly, I didn't give a shit. You could have gotten me to Kong and Godzilla have a conflict way easier, way faster, for a completely simpler reason. And then in the background, there's some company, yes, that creates a Mechagodzilla, and you could still kind of have that. But all the reasons why those things come together and all the tissue getting you there, I was extremely uninterested in.
I think I understand why the certain things have to happen. Like, yes, we just want big monsters to fight each other, but big monsters do not communicate how and why they are doing things to the audience. You have to have something that expositions and explains things to people watching the movie, which is where the human characters come in.
Fair.
But because everybody's spread out, and like you said, everything is just you're just following the humans to push everything together so that you come to the eventual climax of everyone being in the same spot at the same place for different reasons, and everything culminates in the big fight at the end. But there's so many different spinning plates at the first part of this movie that they're giving you the bare minimum setup to get to where you need to go by the end of it. And it's so bare paper thin that most of it amounts to nothing just to get to where you need to go.
So can I list off some of my serious problems with the people end of this movie?
Sure.
Because I have quite a list. First and foremost, we see them early on in the movie. Madison, I think is her name. Millie Bobby Brown's character.
Correct.
Yeah.
Goes with Fire Fist in Pensacola to Chinatown to find some connection to find this guy on the podcast. First and foremost, population of Pensacola, Florida is about 50,000. It does not have a fucking Chinatown. 50,000 is smaller than Greensburg. Let me make that clear. It's 50,000 is the population of Pensacola. There is no Chinatown in Pensacola. It's not a thing. 50,000 population in that big of an area has no... It's not a thing. That's bullshit. Then the reason that they're there is they're looking to find a guy who buys a lot of bleach. Okay?
Yes.
And when they talk to him about it, or when they're talking about it, we're talking about a black man who showers with bleach and shows no signs of it whatsoever. I'm sorry, you do not shower with bleach. You don't do it. You're going to poison and burn your skin. That's what's going to happen. You're going to have lesions all over your skin. You're going to basically be killing yourself slowly with bleach. That's ridiculous and stupid. There's a reason why bleach on your skin is bad. That was just... Okay. Following these same characters, from Pensacola to Hong Kong, there is a maglev tunnel. pardon me, what the fuck? How do you have a maglev tunnel that goes from Pensacola to Hong Kong? That would
because
take
of the
generations.
Say, how do you have
to
holes
build.
in the earth that go to nothing? Like, this is a
No,
movie that
I
is
get that,
not
but
grounded
but that's
at
the
all.
monster. I understand that, but that's the monster side of things. This is the human side of things, talking about technology that very much does exist with maglev technology. It's a thing. It does exist. And
It's
they're
also
saying
the same
they
movie
built
that
a
has
ton-
flying cars that go into the middle of the earth. Like, the sci-fi part of this takes over this movie.
No, I get that, but there's no reason for the tunnel. That whole aspect. They could have had these
It looked
characters
cool.
be living in Hong Kong and had this whole conflict happen in Hong Kong. There was no reason to have the separate spaces and to have them travel from one place to the other. It was pointless.
I think that's almost like Blockbuster Movie 101, as it has to be a globe-trotting adventure.
Okay. Sure. This is kind of a human problem. Kong doing sign language is 100% bullshit. There's no way people would not have noticed Kong doing sign language.
Well, no, it is weird that the foremost Kong expert never thought that he could learn sign language. That's
Which is also bullshit.
that
because
just disqualifies you from being a Kong expert, I think.
well, and they also, like, recently, they proved gorillas don't learn sign language. That whole Coco thing was a hoax. That wasn't real. They don't learn sign language. They can't. And it's a thing. But at the same time, he's how fucking big, and you're not seeing this giant thing sign? Do they not have cameras on him at all times, observing him?
It seemed like
Why
they
would
should.
they not?
Yeah.
What's the
No,
point
didn't we
of this
see a
entire
room of like
installation?
30 cameras observing him?
Yeah. Like,
Like we literally saw that.
yeah.
So
You would see this fucker doing sign language. You would know. It's very obvious, especially if you have a daughter who is deaf that you do sign language with all the time. You would know what sign language looks like, and you would recognize it right away.
So I feel like we're veering into story decisions here and story problems and not character stuff. Is there anything else we want to touch on for character stuff before we spin to story stuff?
Josh had mentioned it. I think King of Monsters did a pretty good job with their humans. I think out of all of these, it did the best. Like, I would put the original Godzilla up there, but I think that movie, human-wise, really dropped off after Cranston died. So, like, after the first 40, 50 minutes. Because after that, it went to his son, who's just generic action hero man. Who
Fair.
can't really deliver a story at that point. So I think you can do these well. I think Pacific Rim does a really good job of human stuff. I think it's
Yes.
possible to be done. I think it was 2015, the Gojira film that released in Japan did a really great job with the human stuff. Godzilla is nothing like the Godzilla in these films. He's very much more turtle-like and stuff, and it's very much carried by the humans, and it's a criticism of like the inactivity of the Japanese government to disasters in general. And like that film does a great job with the human characters building the tension in the story.
Yeah.
This does not. You're never, because I don't invested in any of these people. I don't care if Skarsgård lives or dies. He gets tricked by like an evil guy in like 2 seconds.
And I feel like there's a cut of this movie where they probably have all the backstory for all these characters to make you give a shit about them. But again, for a movie that goes into theater and stuff like that, 2-hour runtime is typically what people shoot for. So all of that stuff gets cut.
But
Right.
also
Did
they
you
could
say
have
there's
cut
a
the whole.
Snyder cut of this movie.
There might be.
There was an interview with the director that said, I have a 5-hour version of this movie, but people took that and said, oh, release the Godzilla versus Kong, the Monsterverse cut of this movie. In the same quote, he goes on to say, but I'm completely happy with this cut of the movie. This is what movie making is. Editing is hard. You have to make tough decisions to get the movie to the runtime that you need to do to put it in a theater. He solely admits that there was extra stuff in the theater that had to get cut to make way for the time frame they wanted to release it in. So that he's not saying, like, I prefer my 5-hour version of the movie. He is completely accepting this is what we got, this is what we're dealing with, basically saying deal with it.
So,
But also,
I
with
do
what
have
we got,
one
I
other
don't know if I
problem.
want 3 more hours.
I
Like,
do-
unless
I
it's
do
all
have-
monsters. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
that's true.
want 3 hours.
Well, it
of
could be
these
like
humans.
more of like Kong, because they like in the opening credits you get like the whole like it looks like bracketology
Right.
of like who's defeated who and all that going on, and then it's showing like, oh, now we're at Kong versus Godzilla. Maybe there was some of that going on, showing like Kong and Godzilla killing off some more monsters along the way. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe some of that was in there and it got cut. I have no idea. But I have one other character issue.
Okay.
So I don't remember her name, but she's the Apex guy's daughter, Isa Gonzalez.
Yeah.
She plays kind of a villain kind of character here a little bit. But at one point, I have a serious issue with this character in the development because she is supposed to be there and have taken part and know everything about these heaves. She even corrects him at one point when he calls it a helicopter, and she says, no, it's a heave. This is the Hollow Earth aerial vehicle. You know, that's what this is. And then later, when he actually explains to her what's about to happen, that she was a lead designer on this fucking vehicle so that it would work when this happens. He tells her about it, and she gets scared. And I'm just like, who made that decision?
I honestly didn't pick up that she was anyway involved in the development of that vehicle, but I think that's just more to do with the storytelling than anything else.
Okay. I mean, I took it.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
She
I
was
just
very
think
defensive about it. And
I feel
very,
like
like
I took the name thing as just her like knowing the names of things because she works there.
Why would she be the one they sent and not somebody that knows the inner and outer workings of these things?
She's the one he trusts
That's why
the
I
most.
assume she does.
Yeah,
That's
she's
why I
the
assumed
one
she
that'll
was there.
get the job done.
Yeah.
Well, okay. But still, it seemed like, oh, you don't know what this vehicle's about to do, and it's your company's vehicle. Okay.
I also
think
feel
there's
like
also the part where someone explains it to you right before it happens that makes it worse. Like, you know how the roller coaster works, but when someone's like, and then 20 G's of pure force hits you, you know.
I feel like
It's a little different.
if I had to guess, and this is just me extrapolating based on the very little evidence that's in the movie, that Skarsgård's character, along with being a scientist, obviously had the brother that died that was a pilot. I'm almost willing to bet that he had some sort of pilot training or was somehow in that profession or knew enough about that profession, because by the end of the movie, he's flying the damn thing, which is not explained at all. So
Right.
I don't know if he like tried to be like do something in memorial for his brother, like try to take up flying and try to be a pilot, and you know, there could be something in there. Obviously that got cut. Nothing of that. That's me just extrapolating based on his brother was a pilot. He's playing with this little astronaut guy the whole time and suddenly knows how to fly a vehicle by the end of the movie. That's what we have to go on.
Yeah.
Andy, I don't know if I can't remember. Did we get you in for characters? Anything you want to touch on for characters?
I think I chirped in a couple of times, but
Okay.
I don't think anyone really had a very strong performance in this.
Okay. Yeah, I think
And I don't know that it was necessarily their faults
yes.
either.
I
I
would
don't
agree.
think the producers or director really cared to spend much more time than they gave on like any sort of character development in it.
Yeah.
And I thought it did a fairly poor, like their story arcs did a fairly poor job of driving the story.
Yes.
Like Josh said, like I really didn't care. I would put Godzilla, the first movie, highest as far as like caring about the people, with King of Monsters like slightly below it. And this is pretty far away from it.
It's one of those
honestly.
things where, you know, if you walk out of a movie and basically forget everyone that starred and like everything about these characters that are in the movie, that's not good for your characters in this movie.
Right.
Obviously, you kind of come out of it talking about Godzilla versus Kong. They are the focus. They are the clear focus of this movie. And the only character that I sort of kind of maybe gave a shit about was the little girl. Everybody else is completely forgettable to me.
Like, I think the worst tragedy of the characters is like the villain never, like, that's so easy to write. I've not, like, you know, out of all the things to write, like evil megalomaniac rich villain, you know, that's been done so much, just throw out someone else's, just pretend it's a Bond villain.
Yeah.
Like, even his death scene isn't that satisfying.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, it's so stereotypical. Like, everyone sees it coming a mile away. And it's still like, eh.
For all intents and purposes, the guy isn't even technically a villain because he doesn't intentionally get Godzilla to attack Pensacola because he wants to make some profit or something. He just wants to kill Godzilla so they're safe. He's afraid of Godzilla. He has good intentions in what he's doing.
The road
He's
to
just
hell.
a fucking idiot.
I guess I classify an evil under the absolute power who's going to corrupt him eventually, and he kind of has like an evil laugh. I think he tried to bust out.
Oh, they definitely framed him as evil. Like, the character seemed evil. Everything about the character screamed evil. It's just what he's actually doing and actually does. He doesn't really do anything evil.
Like, I preferred the evil guy in Bloodshot.
I feel like we need a bingo card for how many times you talk about Bloodshot and turtles on every other podcast that we do.
What I say?
Wait till we get Ghost Rider on that list for him.
Oh, dear
Either
God.
that, or we'll do a drunk cast, and we'll do a shot every time he mentions something
Oh,
about
God.
turtles
Oh,
or
God.
Bloodshot.
That'll be the next live stream.
I am not built for that. So we've already started veering into story. So let's just head into story. What did you guys think of the overall story for this movie? I feel like we're gonna have some complaints. Let's spin it
feel
this way.
like-
Did anyone like the story?
I like the
Yes.
story, but I feel like I had to connect a lot of the dots on my own, and I would have liked to have those dots closer, or if not, already connected.
Can you be more specific?
I didn't immediately pick up that Ghidorah was controlling Mechagodzilla.
Okay, fair.
They sort of really mention it in passing. I feel like you were overhearing what Millie Bobby Brown was overhearing to make that connection.
Watching it a second time is when I picked it up, which is they find the skull where the Pacific Rim thing happens,
Right.
where they control Mechagodzilla from. And the podcast guy says like, "Oh, okay, the other skull for Ghidorah is in Mechagodzilla." That makes the telepathic connection between the two, because Ghidorah could telepathically talk to each head.
Mhm.
There's only 2 heads left. They put one skull there, and they telepathically link the other one to the Mechagodzilla, and that's how they control him.
And why that guy knows that information, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm so confused because I didn't pick that up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
one
I didn't
quick
pick
line.
up that the skull was in Mechagodzilla.
And
I
it's
thought
a
that was the post-credit scene from King of Monsters Ghidorah head. Because they show...
Yeah, the one they're using as the vessel that you actually see the like fossil skeleton skull. That I assumed that was the same one. Brian, I'm the same as Mike though. I didn't
There were 2 heads left.
catch that whole thing that
of
there's
Ghidorah,
another
but there was a third
there's
head.
another head somewhere.
What's his name had? Charles Dance had.
I thought the third one got eaten or something, didn't it?
No. He regrew. The one head got
okay,
bitten
all right.
off, and it regrew, and Charles Dance's character had the one that got bitten off in the first place.
Well, then that
That-
throws my
that's
logic
for the
off, because
next
I don't know
movie.
where the third head is. I was
No,
only
no,
counting
that's
for
for
2.
That's for Mechagodzilla. We haven't had Mechagodzilla yet. I mean,
Oh god.
That's
that's
true.
a very
I guess that could
established
still
character
happen.
there. That's what I assumed. Like, okay, there's 2. The third one, oh, they're gonna do Mechagodzilla at some point.
I didn't even catch the fact that there was 2 in play here, let alone
It's
a
Yeah.
third.
one
Yeah,
line
it-
of dialogue,
it's-
and it's thrown away very quickly.
Yeah, it's you overhearing what another character is overhearing, and it's just like you're just like, what was that thing in the tunnel that just happened over there? I'm not really sure, but yeah, let's go with it.
Totally
It's like
missed
there's
it.
a lot of scenes that are just exposition sequences, and the fact when they find that skull, they just spit all this information at you to connect the story dots, and it
Yeah.
happens so quickly and so much at once that you miss half of it.
Yeah, and I feel like you're distracted by like seeing the skull and all the
Oh, the
neat
pretty
stuff
lights.
that's happening on the screen that you're not like paying attention to like this little like these scrubs talking about what the fuck ever, and that it's actually
Like,
really important.
There's other ways to do it, like showing the construction of like having a similar skull in the head or something.
Yes.
There's
Yeah,
a lot of things
they
to do
could've-
that, but
Yeah,
I know artists who use subtext and they're all cowards.
I mean, in that whole thing to me made no fucking sense. Is to like it makes sense from a story point, so they can have Mechagodzilla be controlled by Ghidorah and all that. But it makes no fucking sense as to why on earth they need Ghidorah's skulls at all. None of that made no sense at all. Build the giant robot Godzilla. Done. Why do we need these skulls? Make a fucking remote control for it.
it was
I think,
something
like-
about the power to make Godzilla run, right? Wasn't that
They had
a lot
they had to harness the energy from the hollow earth to provide a big enough power source to power a robot that large. So to harness the power, the easiest way to do it, obviously, was to have 2 skulls from King Ghidorah. There
Which
was
they
no
never
other
really
possible
harness
way.
that power. They somehow synthesize it in 2 minutes.
Yeah, I said that to
Maglev
Amy.
from Pensacola to Hong Kong. Come on, they got this.
Yeah, they hear about it. They're like, oh, they have it, and then it's just digitally like synthesized.
Right.
Like, what the
Yeah.
fuck was?
The plot
Yeah.
points
This
of
is
this
like
movie,
Mega Man-ass
like the more you
bullshit.
stop and think about them, they make absolutely no sense.
No.
That's
Yeah,
what I
right,
mean.
right.
That's what I mean about the dots not being connected
Yes.
and rather far apart.
I think
Well, like I told Amy when she was trying to figure out Hollow Earth, like, just don't. Just accept it.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know people like thought about that. I just assumed we all were like, yeah, sure, that could, yeah. Mole men. Yeah,
Well, I think
that's
the
where mole
difference.
men live.
Well, the difference is that like you go to something like 2014's Godzilla, and then you jump to this movie, and the gaps in logic and tone and grounded nature of what these movies are make such a far leap, and they're supposed to be in the same universe. Like
Yeah.
the first Godzilla is so grounded in real world stuff that it
Yeah.
fits a lot better, and then this goes so far into science fiction and Pacific Rim weird shit that you're just like, what? Where is the jump here? Even like Kong never made that jump. I don't remember King of Monsters having that much sci-fi heavy shit in
No,
here.
with like even the like all the like Toho original Godzillas like make a lot more sense tech wise than this does. And those are just dudes in rubber suits. Like, and you're trying to follow the story. Like, there's a Godzilla movie where he fights like basically a giant Power Ranger, and that makes more sense
Ultraman.
tech
Ultraman,
wise.
yeah.
Yeah, it makes more sense tech wise than like this like leap of faith. Like, yeah, if all it took to synthesize the thing was getting it, there had to be an easier way to get down there,
Right.
or synthesize something else. Like, there's like so many like this is the story I want to tell. What's the quickest way I can write it?
Yes, correct. I think within the first 5 minutes I was like rolling my eyes and shaking my head because, and maybe you guys interpreted this differently, but when Kong sort of like discovers that he's captured, like in a dome.
Yeah, that he's,
that the
that
first time he's
he's Truman? Yeah,
Yeah, is that him discovering he's there, or has he known for a while that he is in there?
I think he's known, but that's the first time he's like lashed out at it.
Okay, because I interpreted it like he's discovering that he is captured and encased in this dome. And my first question is, how the fuck did they put him in there without him knowing? Like, that's not a small thing. You can't just drop that on him while he's sleeping. They had to build that around him.
So that's also when we find out he's no longer on. Like, I thought maybe that was still like Skull Island or something, but they moved him like somewhere else. I guess
No, it was still on Skull Island.
Yeah.
Was it? I thought they moved him. I guess I thought they had moved him and then built it around.
No,
I guess I assumed they used 20 million helicopters to just plop it down.
Someone
My
explained it to me
assumption
that
there
way.
is-
They're like, oh, they just plopped it down. Like, and I'm like, no, you can't do it. There's no helicopters in the world that would do that.
My assumption with it was that it looked kind of like a stadium
Yes.
from the outside. My assumption is it has, like stadiums do, an opening roof, and that they drugged Kong, picked him up with helicopters, and put him in there
Because
after it was built.
I think
That
they
makes the
explained
most
also
sense.
that Skull Island has been overtaken by a storm that seems to be never ending. And they put him in there, one, to protect him from Godzilla, and two, to protect him from the storm.
So can we actually jump on that point? Because what you just said, the protect him from Godzilla part, I feel like that jumped out of nowhere very quickly. Like, we opened the movie with the assumption that for whatever reason that I didn't understand, these people involved with Kong already are process. I don't know. They're working towards some goal of keeping him safe from Godzilla. I have no goddamn idea why.
Well, I think after King of Monsters, you're led to believe Godzilla hunts anything that opposes him.
No, but why does Kong need to be alive?
Well,
I thought that was Josh's question.
Because
I'm
Kong is
sorry,
a
if that's
primate
not.
and not
I
just
thought
a
your question
random
was
ass
like, why
monster.
bother? Like, let him die out?
No,
That's
not
nature,
not
bro.
entirely, but like the whatever precipitates it, I don't get it. Like, and maybe there is the hunting thing, but Kong is on Skull Island, far the frick away. He probably
Right.
doesn't know Godzilla exists or is anywhere nearby. He's not instinctually going to look for him. They haven't explained that anything else has happened. They drop us like in the middle of something that has started that they don't explain why it started.
They
Well,
reference
that's the
the-
orca.
they
from-
reference like their ancestors having a rivalry.
Yeah,
So I don't know if
that
that's
was
building
shoehorned
it
bullshit.
also. Like they're just going off of that assumption that these two beings fought ages ago, so they will fight again.
It's also just the Titans thing. Like, Godzilla is gonna go try and conquer all the other Titans. That's why he's king of monsters. So it's eventually
But
going to find
But
Kong.
but to Brian's point, only those that lash out, only those who are combative, those who oppose him, those who seek out the fight. I'm not saying
technically,
I'm not saying it couldn't happen, and I wouldn't believe it. It just felt like they opened the movie as if it's like something was already in progress.
But
I
he
didn't
already hunted
understand.
Mechagodzilla. You know, he hunted Mechagodzilla before it was finished. Mechagodzilla hadn't attacked him or lashed out yet. Like I guess you could say maybe he sensed it was King Ghidorah's skull. But
proximity wise, the thing just busted out of a mountain.
No.
Before,
He's
like,
talking
to
when
kick
he
off the
destroys
movie.
Pensacola.
yeah, like when he's trying to hunt it in Pensacola and like is doing that whole thing
Like the
before
very
it
opening
shows
of the
up.
movie.
Oh,
right.
right.
Because
Okay.
it-
So,
because it
but
was
so at the beginning, I took
Mecha's
that as
eye or something.
yeah. The guy, the podcaster guy, sees the wall blown open, and he sees the eye. So I took that as the technology they're working on is sending off a beacon of some kind that is
That
reminiscent
could be it. Yeah.
of
Because
Ghidorah,
of Ghidorah's
which
energy. Yep.
Godzilla is picking up on. So he's drawn to something, number one, that he is familiar with and that he knows has already been a threat. But
And that would
I
track
don't
because
know.
I feel like they made reference to like a field test. Like I think Pensacola, he attacks Pensacola because that was the first field test.
Yes, they wanted to see if he would be drawn to it. He wants to draw Godzilla to a fight with that thing because he wants his creation to kill Godzilla.
Yeah.
So I get that. Like I said, I don't think there is a believable way to tell me why these two things would come into conflict with each other. I just don't think that was ever for me. It wasn't presented clearly, and it felt like the movie opened as if that already started, and we were at like step 3.
Yeah.
See, I feel like you almost like have to have the information from King of Monsters about the orca and that Godzilla is going to react to another alpha, to another apex predator, to another top end, which is what Kong would give off. And Godzilla hears that no matter where it is in the world, if Kong roars, Godzilla's coming. At this point, Godzilla's active at this time. He wasn't active when, we see Kong on Skull Island. Godzilla's active right now. Kong makes a ruckus of any kind, even just, say, killing another skull crawler or whatever they were called.
Like I almost feel like
Godzilla's going to take notice because that's what he does.
like Mike was saying, the opening credits of the movie, the bracket, is trying to tell you that maybe, for all we know, these are the last two standing.
Yeah, because we do see a bunch of other monsters at the end of King of Monsters all kind of bending the knee to Godzilla.
Well, yeah, I guess
and
that's
then
fair.
maybe they start to get killed off because they step out of line.
I guess maybe I'll have to rewatch because I think I took that as more of like a stylized, I hate like inconsequential, fun title sequence, just playing on the idea like you guys were talking about, like it's a bracket. But I didn't.
Sure.
I didn't. If they were trying to, I didn't understand if they were actually trying to convey prologue storytelling to me through that mechanism. And if they were, I missed that.
Yeah, I think it was prologue stuff that we'd seen before, references to other movies and all the monsters that they defeated on their step up the ladder to each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Josh, I think to your point though, overall, it's just another part of this movie that once again just told us something and refused to show us it.
Yeah, I
I
think, the story itself is very
Which
predictable. I
is
think
also-
it hit a lot of the stuff that we expected it to, which
Yeah.
is like they fight, they go back and forth, they set aside their differences to fight something big. It's the BVS formula, which is what we always, I think, referred to it when we talked about this movie before.
Yep.
And it hits all of those beats.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, we don't know if they have mothers.
True.
Well,
Well, we know
specifically,
Kong has a king down there somewhere.
we don't know what their names are.
An adult version of him.
It's true.
But
That's the real key.
but Ian, to your point you just made, the fact that the fact that they spent so much time showing me the useless, inconsequential shit that I think they did, and that they went on the most roundabout way to get you to the point we needed to. They hesitated not at all to show us all that,
Oh,
but
yeah.
actually give it, you reframing the story and using the time to show us the crap that actually would have made sense. Nah.
That's why is that any of that 3 hours that was cut? I wonder, like, or was it just more useless bullshit?
The first thing in my head after I got out, like after the movie ended, was that felt rushed.
I could see that. Yeah.
Sure.
They put the money and time into the fights with Godzilla and Kong,
Which
makes
were
sense.
amazing. and they were great fight scenes. I loved
Yes.
them. They were fantastic. But I was still like, wow, it's over already. I feel like I missed a lot of lore there that I wanted.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
That's what I'm struggling with, is the duality of that exact. You're right about that point, and that I also feel like it was so long because there was so much crap.
Yes.
Like the important stuff was rushed, and then but all the stuff in between the important stuff was like, why did I need the last 15 minutes? I didn't. Cut that, cut that,
Yeah.
cut that, cut that. So yeah, it simultaneously felt like overall rushed, but just then the stuff that they actually took the time to give us was just dragged out for no reason.
And I think to
Like, I
Ian's
think it's
point,
bad.
like if this is the stuff that made it in the movie,
What didn't?
presumably it's better than the stuff that got cut. So what the fuck did they cut out?
Yeah, I really would like to see a director's cut, I guess, of this movie if it ever maybe exists.
Start hashtagging that, Andy. Lead the
Yeah.
charge.
Like, I was joking with my one friend. I want to make a cut where I cut out like all of the like podcaster stuff, that whole storyline, and see how much better that is as a viewing experience for myself. Just knock that out. Just get rid of it.
That part of the story was really bad. The Kong aspect of the story was better, but not by much.
It almost felt like a Kong movie with Godzilla in it.
Yes.
That's what it was.
Mike was right.
Kong is the hero.
Kong is the hero in this movie. I don't think he wins, but he's the hero in the movie.
Yeah, just like in Rocky, he's the hero, but he doesn't win.
I'd call this a draw.
There's Rocky 2.
But we're not going to get back into Godzilla coming to a draw with a baby Kong. We're not going to do that again. What I would like to mention, though, is this might just be me. I wanted to ask you guys all this. Did the proportions of the monsters feel like they're different in some scenes than others to anybody else?
Yes.
That felt off to me throughout the whole fucking movie. Like, sometimes I feel like the ratio of Kong's size to people and Godzilla's size to people just seems off.
And I don't know if I really caught that at all.
Like, it changes. Like, it's not always the same.
It's certainly possible it did. It's not something I noticed when watching.
Yeah, if I watch it again, I'll have to try to consciously look for that and see if it
I
stands
just
out.
feel like they show Kong, and like, first of all, Kong and Godzilla standing on top of an aircraft carrier that doesn't sink. Just get
So
the fuck
okay,
out.
so that
That's
reminds me
ridiculous.
too. For a movie that focuses a large amount of time on human characters, there is no fucks given for all the humans that die in this movie.
No.
Kong literally
Hundreds,
just
just in
skips
that
through an
scene in the
aircraft
ocean
carrier
alone.
and kills how many people for taking a step, and they're just like, "Oh man, we lost the fleet." Are you serious? Like, how many people just
They're
died?
burning in the distance. Hundreds of people. There's 5 of them left.
Not to
People are
mention
stuck in
takes to
the
run an
aircraft
aircraft
carrier that
carrier?
then sinks in the ocean, and no one's going, "Oh my god, all those people." They're just like, "Well, Kong's here. We're good."
Maybe we
Keep
shouldn't be
going.
doing
Did
this. Maybe we should just let them kill each other and be done with this shit.
Right? Did you catch the part? I think this is what I saw when it's either the carrier or one of the other vessels sinks, and I think it's like broken in two. As it's sinking, there's an underwater shot of that piece falling further down in the water, and there's like a couple like stream of bodies that come out of it.
Oh, see, I didn't even see that.
If I saw what I
Like,
think
I remember
it was,
that
yeah.
shot. I don't remember the bodies. I'd have to look again.
I mean, even in that scene, you get like the anchor of the one ship attaches to Godzilla, and he's like dragging half a ship behind him, and
Yeah.
then nothing happens with that.
Yeah.
They show that. They show it dragging behind him, and then nothing I thought he was going to pick it up and slam it into Kong or something. Like, something cool was about to happen
yeah.
with that thing. Nothing happens. It's just like, oh, yeah, this is there. Like, it's attached to Godzilla now.
Yeah,
Like,
was that supposed to be
that supposed to...
was it supposed to be a humorous moment or something? I didn't get that either.
I thought they were trying to, like, give Kong or give Godzilla, like, a handicap because the fight was in water or something, but
Yeah,
they
I
never even went there.
expected to see something about that, and then there wasn't.
There was so much wrong with that fight at the ocean that just... And the boat just turns back over after being flipped, and it's fine.
Yeah.
It flips upside down and
Yes.
flips back up. We're good. We're good. Everything's... It still works. Everybody's alive. We're good. We can keep going.
Is that not what would happen?
So honestly, I feel like I could just keep like digging into story elements that piss me off, but I don't want to get just like an hour and a half of us just tearing the story apart. So is there anything else that we want to touch on? I don't really have too much else specific to talk about, but
at the start of this, you asked, did anybody actually like the story? And this is where we went from
yes, yes.
But I never got to, I said yes. Okay, and I can explain why. Because, again, like Josh said before, I don't give a shit about the people. They're there to serve a purpose, which is to get us from point A to point B, which is point A is Kong and Godzilla and Mechagodzilla are not fighting, and point B is they are fighting.
Fair.
That's what the people are serving the purpose for in this movie, and they do a fairly good job of letting the people serve that purpose. They don't do a good job of building characters or having things make a lot of logical sense or anything, but they get us to the fight in a rather fast-paced way. The movie doesn't feel like you're waiting for stuff to happen.
Yeah.
It's a well-paced movie in that sense. I think in a more honest version, as opposed to just tearing into Ian about the fight, they give people that are fans of either Kong or Godzilla something to be happy about. They give the ending for Kong, the ending for Godzilla that pretty much everybody actually expected and is happy with. And they managed to do that while still working in Mechagodzilla. I think that's fun. That's good. I enjoy that.
I actually was thinking when Godzilla and Kong have their fights that I know over the years, both of you has said, like, this is how they'd fight. This is what they do. And I saw bullet points of each of your points during every one of those fights. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Kong's agility and use of tools was something you always brought up, Mike. Ian, the atomic breath and just having that type of power and using his tail happens during the movie also. So, like, I saw both of you represented when I was watching this movie.
Also, we said we weren't supposed to rag on the movie anymore, but I did have one other thing about that stupid scene in the ocean. Godzilla whips his tail up and takes fighter jets out of the air. How fucking low were they flying? Why would they be flying low enough for his tail?
That's a big tail.
It is a big
It's
tail,
a big
but
tail.
it's a fighter jet. There's no reason for them to be flying close enough to be attacked by the giant monster.
Well, they know that now.
They learned their lesson, I guess.
I mean, did any of the people alive even report that, though? They might not have learned their lesson.
That's true.
Maybe someone else learned
You
the
know.
lesson from watching them die.
In the fight, I felt like there was one moment where I thought something was going to happen and it didn't, but it still wound up working. So Kong gets brought back with the defibrillator thing, right? And he stands up and he's baring his teeth and he looks fucking angry and he's all jacked up and his arms are ready to go. And I really thought he was going to reload the fists. I thought it was going to happen and he was going to go after Mechagodzilla. And he didn't reload the fists and it made me disappointed.
They bring back Henry Cavill just to get that motion capture right.
It's just, I thought it was about, like, it looked like he was about to do it. You know what I mean? Like the way they had him get up and go and it was like, oh, he's going to do it.
That would have been such a bow of ridiculousness for this movie, and I would have loved it.
What do you mean the fist?
I mean,
The Henry
Like
Cavill
reload the
arm
fist, you know?
reload from Mission Impossible.
yeah, and the other, there's one other ridiculous thing. Godzilla grinning and making like a grunt at one point I thought was kind of cringe. I didn't like that. They focus in on him one time and he smiles and I'm like, that's not a god. Like, I don't want Godzilla smiling. That's not. But the other aspect that I want to point out was one of the coolest scenes I've seen in a movie in recent years, coolest shots, whatever, is when they bring the heave back from the Hollow Earth and they fly right past Kong's face and they're flying just right along the fucking beam from Godzilla and they go right past him. That was fucking cool.
I hated it. I
Why
thought
did you hate it?
It was so stupid. And I caught us.
That was like,
There was something somewhere. Someone interviewed the director, and I think that scene came up, and he said something like the inspiration for that scene specifically was the Back to the Future ride.
yeah, it felt like that. Like it, but with
And when I heard that, it suddenly went like to the next level. Like, oh my god, they're gonna make a ride about this now, where it's not gonna be Back to the Future. You're gonna fly past Kong and Godzilla through this movie. That's gonna be a ride. Like the whole like marketing
No,
Think-
it's gonna be the same ride. They're just gonna swap it back,
That
back
too.
south on the same rails.
But like it just spiraled out of control to me, and I was like, "This sounds like such a stupid thing." But
Oh, that was a studio note, I bet now.
I would not be surprised. I do not know that for a fact, but it would not surprise me. Like, hey,
I
you have
still
to put
found
this
it
shot in
fun.
there because we're gonna make a ride about it later.
And this
And I
will
wanna
save
ride
us
that
from
ride.
filming it later for the ride.
I loved it. I want to ride the ride. But that's just my opinion.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, if that scene is for you, I would bet you are first in line for that ride.
And the last thing I'll say on a big positive is the Hollow Earth. Even though it makes no sense, why does it have a sun? What the hell's going on there? Fucking cool. It was really a cool touch to the movie. The monster he fights in there was really fucking weird and cool. I like that thing.
And that's something I think they could use for like going forward. Like you'd always just have monsters spill out of that thing that they have to fight somewhere later or something like that. Like that's a plot point you could reuse. And it also like
Yeah, when Kong's an adult.
it also borderlines Pacific Rim for me to the point where I'm like, are they really leaning into this, or are they gonna try to cross over at some point? Like the whole telekinetic controlling Mechagodzilla and then having a place somewhere deep within the earth that somehow brings out monsters is like, okay, this is very Pacific Rim to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I also, I mean, I guess that's something we should talk about. I think this actually might just be the end. Like,
Yeah,
this
I was
kinda
going to lean in,
bookends,
if there's is there anything else we want to talk about for this movie specifically, because we'll sort of spiral into that, like sort of what comes next.
The only this really isn't going to fit anywhere, but it's something that I texted Brian while I was watching it. From the moment that they showed this tool that Kong finds in Hollow Earth through the rest of the movie, when he was down, when he was losing,
I did the same thing. I know what
every
you're gonna say.
time it could come into play, or I have Peter Dinklage's voice as Eitri from Infinity War in my head, and I said it out loud like 20 times.
Ian, cover your ears, more Infinity War spoilers.
20 times while I'm watching this movie of just him going, "He needs the axe. Where's the handle?
Yeah.
Tree, help me find the handle." Every freaking time.
Yeah, I definitely did that.
When he's like beaten and down, you're like, it's over there. I think they even give a shot of like, Kong fell over and the thing is over there. He needs the axe. That's my piece.
I kind of just want to watch this movie with you, just for those points.
I'll give
I
you
kind
a
of want to make
commentary
like an
track.
edited clip of like showing those scenes together, like Kong back up against the building, and then
Yes.
just
Cut
cue
to
in
Eitri.
Eitri.
If it's not on YouTube
Like-
already, I'm gonna be very disappointed.
Yeah, the internet has failed
That's
us.
true. It probably is. Like, it's a very easy connection.
So we're gonna use Mike's sort of segue. So we're 4 movies into this connected Monsterverse or whatever you want to call it. Sort of to Mike's point, do you see this continuing from here? Like, how did they were all leading to this movie? So are we going to see some other team up movie for these characters go like Godzilla and Kong going forward? Is this the end of this? Are they going to reboot it after this? Like, where do you see the Monsterverse going from here?
I think they'll probably go individual movies again for both before they sort of converge again.
Okay.
Um,
So this is not the end for you. You definitely see this continuing going forward.
if this is as popular as it already has been after one weekend, yes.
Fair point. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the need to print money will take over. I think they intended this to be the end when they were putting the whole thing together.
Well, to your
And, you know,
point
this
about
was-
just printing money, like Godzilla and Kong, no matter what they are in, will make money. So will it be a continuation of this movie verse, or will it be a reboot after this?
Right, and that's the question. You know, because I think they leave a couple things open. Like we had discussed earlier, there's still a Ghidorah skull out there that's
And I forgot about that, so I can see
Unaccounted
that
for.
going somewhere.
Charles Dance's character is unaccounted for with that Ghidorah skull.
Yeah.
Kong is obviously not an adult of his species. Or there is bigger versions of what he is that existed.
And they don't even mention Mothra or Rodan at all.
Right,
this
the
movie.
other monsters. So I could see them continuing it. I could see them having them never intersect again. I could see them playing up eventually like a Godzilla versus Kong 2. There will be a winner this time. You know what I mean? Like, it won't end in a draw or something.
Which plays exactly into your
or
Rocky
like
metaphor.
one of them dies. Right. Yeah, it's just, like one of them's not going to make it out alive kind of thing, where they play it up like there's going to be a dead one at the end of this.
That's a subtitle.
There's a dead one.
Real dead one.
But, I hope they keep making films with Godzilla and Kong. And I mean, like, this design for Godzilla, I love.
Yes, it's very awesome.
And Kong, obviously, you see what he looks like there. He looks great. He's a gorilla. He's just a big gorilla. You can't really do a whole lot different with that.
Yeah.
But he looks great. So I really do hope they keep that going. However, there is other versions of Godzilla that look really good too. I know you guys probably don't watch the other Godzilla films that have existed, but Ian, I assume you've seen Shin Godzilla. That version of Godzilla is fucking awesome. And I like that too. But that's not going to play as well to a Western audience. So it's
So I don't know if you answered the
back
question.
and
Do you
forth
see
kind of
this
thing.
universe continuing or a reboot after this? What do you think?
What do I think they're going to do? I think they're going to continue it.
Okay.
I just think they see money there in continuing the story, and there's too much money in an eventual rematch.
Okay. Ian, what do you think?
So we all know they're going to make more movies with these two characters regardless. So it's really just, is it a continuing universe or not? And I think they left it open enough that they're like, just do it again. Why? Like, what's stopping us?
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason not to. It's not like we said, oh, fuck, they didn't kill one of them. They didn't say, oh, well, the universe is healed now and nothing bad will ever happen again with giant monsters. Like, we saw with this movie, they will very quickly yell, they're fighting now because the bullshit's happening. Like, they'll just do it, They don't need a lot, like, a plot set up
And there's
to
your
get us
poster
it
going.
That
They're
could be the
fighting
name
'cause
of it.
bullshit's happening.
Bullshit's going on, bro. Like, come down to the donkey fights. Like,
They need to hire us for marketing.
Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't think any of either of the three of them have really diverged from a main through line. I think that's pretty smart. And you never, other than Infinity War and Avengers, which were just part 1 and part 2 of the same story, you never go from your big culmination thing right back to it. So I think Andy said it first.
Culmination.
There you go. Glad you picked it up. Laid it down for you. They'll probably try to do another at least 1 or 2 chapters for each of them before bringing them back together again.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a smarter way to do it, is sort of give a breather here. That way the next time they team up, there's more hype around it and anticipation and stuff like that. I'm unclear if I were to guess, I don't know if they'd do another Versus movie. I feel like at this point they should just team up, like just call it a Godzilla Kong movie. Godzilla and Kong or something, not a Versus movie, but
I just think there's so much ability to play it as a versus movie because people want to see them fight. And I really do think you're going to see Kong grow exponentially even bigger. And I think they're probably going to do something similar with Godzilla, and they're just going to up that ante even further.
But I feel like you need a reason for them to fight. If they end on more or less good terms in this movie.
Mecha Gojira.
Right, but they would fight the other
or-
thing. They wouldn't fight each other. That's what I'm getting at here.
But you just do the same thing. Like, oh man, they're both really big now. One of them's got to be better than the other one, so they fight. And then King Mecha Gojira shows up from space, and it's like, oh fuck, Mecha Gojira's here now. Or they're fighting over control of King of the Monster title, and the humans in the future send Mecha Gojira back to the past to stop this big fight from wiping out the human race. That's a plot line from the Toho films.
Do you mentioned the Batman Superman comparison earlier. You work something like that where they're not really enemies anymore, but something intervenes that basically says if you don't harm the other one, bad things are going to happen for you.
Or, oh, that girl grows up and she signs to Kong. If there's even a 1% chance that Godzilla can take us all out, we have to kill him.
That I would buy.
They are both.
I'm in for that movie.
They are both Warner Brothers.
My suggestion was something along the lines of Godzilla matures, or not Godzilla, King Kong matures and becomes King Kong, and the hormones kick in, and all of a sudden he's not so okay with
So it's puberty. Puberty draws them together to fight.
testosterone. it sends, Kong into a rage kind of thing.
And also, that girl's now played by Ben Affleck.
And if they read the certain words from a certain book, they can make Ben do what they want, like the Winter Soldier. They can so an evil person captures him and reads the words, and that's how they get her to sign to Kong.
I also like the idea of the King of Simp going on a hormone rager. It's like, I can't control my emotions, Mom. He starts wearing, he dyes his eyes, he gets put black eyeliner on.
We get an emo Kong. Oh God.
And somehow he accidentally gets a black tie on, like Donkey Kong's tie but black, to really go full into this emo thing.
Oh God.
I'm gonna hit up Zach. This sounds like his kind of film.
Yeah.
This is my gritty Kong coming of age story.
Well, somebody else has to write the source material first, though.
Coming off the Snyder Cut, he's got some pull now.
Mr. Bright Eyes is our trailer song.
All right, so sort of winding down here. Out of the 4 Godzilla Kong movies we have right now, do you have a personal ranking as far as more or less where? I don't know if we'd want to go over all 4, where you would rank all 4, or if you just want to pick your top one, or at the very least maybe say where this one lands in your ranking. So between 2014's Godzilla, 2017's Skull Island, 2019's King of the Monsters, and 2021's Godzilla vs. Kong, how would you sort of rank those for your own personal list?
You get to pick someone.
For me, this is number 1.
Josh, did you say the same thing? Number 1 for you?
This definitely would be, yeah.
Ian, where does this rank for you?
Well, King of Monsters is number 1, and then this is second place. It's either second or third. It comes down to, am I in the mood for monsters fighting or more better human stuff than it's Godzilla or this, depending on do I want a better human story or do I just want to watch kaijus fight?
Yeah. Andy, where are you at with your ranking?
I would say this is third with original Godzilla, King of Monsters, this, and Skull Island.
I actually think I'm right on with Andy. I think that's where I'd put my 4. I still really like that first Godzilla movie a lot.
Oh, I love it. I'll watch it anytime. Yeah.
Wait,
I mean, I think
The
it's
only
one of
one
the.
I honestly don't like is Skull Island.
Yeah.
I think I confused.
It was okay.
I think I confused my response because I think I assume. Wait, Mike, did you say that Godzilla vs. Kong is your favorite of the 4?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to amend. For some reason, my brain thought you said something else, but just immediately it told my mouth to say yeah what he said. Yeah, I'd go with Ian. Probably King of the Monsters is number 1. This is honestly this is interchange with Skull Island 3 or 4, doesn't matter. Maybe another watch of this would help me figure out whether this goes in 3 or 4, but yeah, those 2 are at the bottom.
To be fair, I have to rewatch. I've only seen Skull Island once, and I've only seen King of the Monsters once. So I probably should rewatch those before I get a firm ranking. But I've seen the first Godzilla numerous times. I've seen this one twice now. And I think the first Godzilla, for me, is far and away better than this. I think the fights in this are much better than Godzilla. I think Godzilla is a better overall movie than this movie.
The feeling I got from coming out of Godzilla was I was enthusiastic, I was hyped, and the feeling after I watched this one, I was just kind of like, huh, whoa, what the hell? So
I can agree with that. When that new Godzilla came out and it was good and they had done a good job and you were like, holy shit, Godzilla was bad, especially after the fucking Matthew Broderick trash.
Yeah, that was oof.
The Americans can do Godzilla now?
Yeah, they did it right. This is awesome. Yeah, I can agree with that. this has Kong fighting Godzilla though, and that wins.
That's fair. I mean, to be fair, I'm basing my rating solely on the fights of the two of them in this movie. Everything else is fucking shit.
Yeah, if this was anything but Kong versus Godzilla fighting, this would just be garbage.
Yeah.
The story aspects of the monsters themselves in this movie actually didn't mind at all. Like finding out the lore that they had a thing going on for like their heritage and stuff like that. I actually really dug, but yeah, you got that people involved and it was like
I guess to be fair, I kind of the lore is something I could get into, but it's so haphazardly explained, and this movie takes such a jump and leap into sci-fi without really looking where it came from that it's such a I don't know, it's a large leap of faith for me, like someone just diving in the deep end without actually looking where they're going. And
like this is something like where if they wanted to try and capitalize on the lore aspect is when you make your like mini series on HBO Max exploring just the general kaiju lore in general in this shared universe.
And I'd probably check that out. That would be interesting to me.
Okay.
All right, so before we get to our ratings, one thing I wanted to do earlier and then forgot to do was go over where it's currently sitting on review sites. So Rotten Tomatoes has Godzilla vs. Kong with a 75% fresh for critics and a 92% for audience. So this is very well received right now. Metacritic has a Metascore of 59, user score of 7.1. So that's lower, a lot lower than the other one.
I always say you got to remember with Rotten Tomatoes, the way those scores are tabulated, it's different.
Right.
You know, a 2.5 out of 4 or a 2.5 out of 5, I think, is considered a fresh rating.
Yeah. So,
that's not really a great rating, but it's fresh.
So that's why I sort of give both of these sites ratings. So whichever one you sort of trust more, you can see what each site, how they're rated.
Well, I think it's like you take it as the Rotten Tomatoes ones, people generally would enjoy it, but with the Metacritic one, you get like how they would rank it themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Liked it, didn't like it versus actual ranking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So with those ratings out of the way, we're going to go to our ratings. So out of 10, where would you rank this movie? We'll start with Andy. Out of 10, what do you give it?
I'm going to give it a 7.
Okay.
And I'm going to say that because I feel like original Godzilla was a 9, King of the Monsters was an 8, and Skull Island was probably like a 5 or a 6.
Okay. Falls in line with your rating. Cool. Josh, what do you give it out of 10?
I'm going to start with a 6.
Start with a 6? As in, it's going to change?
You're gonna add to that? Subtract?
No, in a couple weeks or so, if I get around to watching it again, maybe it'll digest a little bit better. But
it's going to be a 6 minus 5.
Yeah,
Sometimes the second and third watches make me like a movie more. So
yeah, and I earlier I said I did that with King of the Monsters. I remember seeing that in the theater for the first time, being very underwhelmed. And then for some reason, watching it again at home, I was like, "Oh wait, I'm really digging this quite a lot." So yeah, it can happen. I'm leaving that open, but I doubt it would get higher than a 6.5 or a 7 even after that.
And to your point, Josh, I think for King of the Monsters, and maybe it's a reason why I need to rewatch it at home, but I remember seeing that in the theater, and I think the perspectives that tries to shoot for the monsters, you're seeing a lot of like ground looking up. So you don't see the stuff you want to see. You're not getting wide shots of the monsters fighting. You're seeing it from the ground, from the human point of view. And it's really tough to see. Everything looks very close. So when you're in a big theater with a big screen, you can't see what you want to see. On a smaller screen, you can take in the image better and see something more clearly. To me, I think that's another reason why I need to go back and watch it. Because I felt the same way coming out of King of Monsters. That I couldn't tell what the fuck was going on because it was just in your face.
Yeah, and to some degree, but your relationship to the screen, your position in a movie theater in stadium seating, your eye level is going to be at one place versus how you're sitting on your couch watching your TV.
Yeah.
And I think that can definitely play into it.
Mike, what do you give it out of 10? Godzilla vs. Kong.
So to your point, about what you were saying in the camera angles and stuff like that. The reason that I feel better about this one is they fight in broad daylight. We get to see a lot more. It's very well lit. It's not in the dark, in the rain. Every time they fight, it's very much better done in that aspect. They're not trying to hide the CG. They're displaying it and showcasing it much more than they did before.
Good point.
I think even what they fit in the
And-
frame, though, too. Like, this is the first movie that felt like Pacific Rim fights to me, out of all
Yeah.
of them.
I agree.
I think they did a really good job using the lighting on the buildings to like enhance the picture. Like it looked really cool with all the
Yes.
building lightings, like just made just brighter and cool looking and shit.
Agreed. Which is why I come down at an 8.5.
Ooh, okay.
I was going to go higher, but man, I just can't forgive all the really bad stuff in the rest of the film. It's really tough. Like this, if this was just on the fights and the enjoyment of seeing it and everything,
Yeah.
it might even be like a 9.5 or a 9.75. But
it's a very
how-
polar movie because I like a lot of it and I dislike a lot of it.
Yeah.
right, there's so much that makes no fucking sense. I can't go higher than that.
Okay.
That's as high as I can give it without just feeling bad about it because of how bad some of it is.
Ian, where do you stand out of 10?
6. It's not the greatest kaiju movie. It's a good one, but there's other ones I would definitely watch. Like Mike mentioned earlier, Shin Godzilla is probably like a 9. It's one of the best Godzilla movies ever.
Mhm.
This is a 6. It's good. It's not bad. It's just none of these have elevated up to that level where I could give any of them, I think, an 8. So it's like 6, 7s where I'm coming down on in this whole universe pretty much. So I think a 6 is a good score in this. My scale always slides around. I'm rating this on the kaiju scale now. So that's why it's shooting at a 6. You might be like, is this really only 1 point better than the kitchen? And it's no, these are different scales.
I mean, side question on that: how many explosions though?
Oh, this was a 10 out of 10 explosion movie.
Okay,
It did have some good
just wanted to
explosions.
be sure.
Yeah.
So just to make sure that scale is still intact.
Oh, yeah,
and
it-
you're
oh.
not just making shit up as you go.
Of course not. I have integrity.
Okay.
I'm thinking for me, I definitely am probably going to be on the low end compared to you guys. I'm leaning towards a 4 for me for this one. And mainly, like, I will fully admit, these types of movies, kaiju movies like this, are not technically in my wheelhouse. I'm not as big of a fan of Godzilla and King Kong as some of the other guys on the show. But I appreciate the fights that they did between the two title characters in this movie. Those alone, I think, give it the 4. Like I said, everything else in this movie, I am much more interested in a good story for a movie, and hopefully everything else fills in the gap. This uses spectacle and wants to fill in the gaps with everything else, and to me, that's a dock. I have to dock it for that. So I did enjoy it after watching it twice. I will probably watch this again at some point just for or at the very least, just skip to the fight sequences because those are the best part of the movie. That's the only thing I really give a shit about. But I think it's definitely one of my least favorite out of the 4.
I mean,
so I'm gonna give it 4.
You'll watch it again, but only because the next movie will be coming out.
That's true. Yeah, just refresh before the
Just
next
to
one.
refresh. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's only because, God damn it, well, I have to.
I know it's part of the universe. Got to refresh
Yeah.
the universe before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, if that was the case, I would have rewatched King of Monsters before watching this, and I did not.
That's true.
But you just watched a 4-hour movie.
That's true. And then the 2-hour movie version I have to write right after that too. So I didn't leave myself a lot
and
of
the
time.
prep movies you watched for that.
Yeah, that's true.
Didn't you
I did.
watch
Yeah,
the others too.
I did do
So
Man of Steel and BVS before that too. So I did prep for the Snyder cut. I did not give Godzilla vs Kong that much screen time.
I mean, that's 11 hours of movie that you did for the Snyder Cut stuff.
Yeah. Well, I had to make Ian proud. I didn't want to come in and undersell Zack Snyder. All right, so that's it for us. If you've enjoyed the show, please support us. Leave a 5-star rating and review. Be sure to give us a share on social media. You can follow or subscribe to the show. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Google, Anchor, Stitcher. Hopefully anywhere you find podcasts, you can find us. Search us out on Facebook. Search for Bry Guy and Super Friends, or go to facebook.com/Bry Guy Super Friends. You can send us questions, comments, topic suggestions, any of that stuff there. Try to email us, bryguysuperfriends@gmail.com. It's there. It's working. I haven't checked it in over a year. Hit us up on Twitter @BGSuperFriends. That we'll see. That we'll talk to you on. Feel free to follow me on Twitch, Jedi Bry Guy. That's Jedi with an I and Bry with a Y. If we ever go live again, if I try some shut it, Andy. If we ever go live on Twitch, that's where we'll do it. If I ever decide to start gameplay anywhere again, that will be it. And on behalf of Andy, Ian, Josh, Mike, and myself, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
He needs the axe.
No, there was a guy posting there was this Instagram post about these bees having a threesome, and he's like, your job as a social media manager is when you post the bee threesome is not to call it a beesome. That way you get all the engagement from all the people in the comments calling it a beesome. And then he showed the comments. There's like 200 people calling it a beesome.
That makes sense,
So
actually.
you just give people the material, let them make the joke.
Yeah,
If you know
because it
it's
drives
there.
engagement. It's like, your job is to be less funny so other people can make the funny joke.
So people can feel like they're very original and funny. That's like...
Even though you could literally see like 100 people in a row post the same thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, is like, you ever read a Reddit comment section? Like, it's... If you read like a forming post, and 90% of it's the same thing getting said. Doesn't matter
Did
what
you
the
guys
post is.
know they shouldn't have put the Cold War guns in Modern Warfare Warzone?
What?
That's
Josh
posted
is
on
like,
the
what
subreddit every day.
Oh, wow.
I was playing into it.
I mean, I know some
Is
of
it
the
a-
words that you said and what they mean, but why?
So imagine
Oh,
if
I
they
shouldn't have
put
even asked.
the turtles into something good,
Like,
and then the turtles ruin the good thing.
feudal Japan.
Like, yeah. Imagine if you put the turtles in feudal
Oh,
Japan
segue.
and ruin feudal Japan. I wonder if that'll ever come up again.
Funny you should mention that. What are you doing next week?
I have to write a summary for another fucking Turtles movie.